Good evening, everybody. Everybody doing well?
Yep, doing great.
All right.
Yes.
Here we are at week 6, case study 2. Time's flying by. All right. Let's talk about the stars of the week. Olivia, I think she's in the other group. One of the things that she pointed out, remembering our activities this past week and this coming week, let's look at that. All right. Cyberbullying and a report of sexual harassment. One of the things that I like that Olivia pointed out is everything that we do this semester is about due process. That's what law is. What's the process? That's kind of our end. The substantive, the legal people have figured out. These are the substance. These are the things that you should do. The procedure is what we carry out. Olivia pointed out that in the policy in her particular district, they have all these forms that must be filled out that show that they follow the procedure. I like that. That is their safety check to protect their district, to make sure that the substance of the law is followed out in procedure. Now, you folks are smart. How does that relate to negligence? Misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. Why do I have those together? I mean, how does your district says this is the substance of the policy. Here's what the law says you're to do. All right, here's the procedure you're to follow. We've got these forms that you must fill out. Circle that back to negligence. What are the 3 types of negligence? Misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. Misfeasance, you did the wrong thing. You didn't know it was wrong, so you did the wrong thing. Malfeasance, you intentionally did the wrong thing, like the teacher in the last case study. What is nonfeasance? You had a duty to act and you didn't. Why'd they put all these forms, required forms in through this process? Was it because they like you?
No, it's just to ensure that all those steps are being taken, and it's just checks and balances.
There you
They
go.
can then go back and make sure and see that it was documented and have that also as evidence if necessary.
Remember, there's personal liability, tort liability now. And what the district is going to make sure is they're going to say, look, we knew what the law was, the substance of the law, due process, what we're supposed to do. We put these checks and balances in place, as Becca said. Now, if you can't produce those documents, it's not, we're off the hook when this case goes to court. We're off the hook. This is a personal liability. This is a simple case of nonfeasance. You had a duty to act. We trained you as to what the law was. We put these forms in as a procedure in place, the procedural due process. If you didn't do those forms along the way that said that you did these things, then that's going to be on you. That's going to be nonfeasance. You got to understand that. Your district wants to protect itself and their assets. That doesn't mean they're bad people. But you've got to understand, not only do you need to know what the substance of the law is, you need to know what the procedure is to carry it out. Just like when we talk about, discipline a kid, what are the steps to due process? Gets to tell his side of the story, has to show him the evidence. You got to interview witnesses, all those things that you have to do. Same thing in reporting. When you get report of cyberbullying or sexual harassment, there are steps that in the procedure that you must follow. This particular district has put in documents in to show that you either did or you didn't do it. They're not going to take your word that you did it and go to court with you and suffer the consequences. If you can't produce those documents, it's not going to go well for you. I like that she pointed that out. In terms of cyberbullying, Sean pointed out that social media does not require a warrant, but your school resource officer should be present with you if you're doing a social media search for cyberbullying for chain of custody. What does chain of custody mean? If you find the social media post and you screenshot it, but it later disappears, if you don't have the policeman there to take that into chain of custody, later on when you go to court and say, I punished this kid because I found this on social media, and the kid says, not mine, didn't do it. You can look at my account, nothing there. What do you do then, hero? You lose. I can tell you what happens. So even though you don't need a warrant to check social media, you need a witness, you need a chain of custody. The resource officer is there with you when you screenshot that, you download it, put it on a thumb drive, you give it to the police officer. He has it in the chain of custody that at the time that you look, it was there. If it disappears later, you're off the hook if you've got a chain of custody. You got to be real careful with these cyber cases. They'll go in and wipe and claim that they were never there, especially social media posts. So that's a good point. You need to make sure so that you have a chain of custody. David pointed out required reporting, and that reminds me to remind you. In that 2001 update to Title IX, which has been around since 1966, in that 2000, remember those court cases, the titles came in 1 through 9 in 1966. The latest revision, as I told you, was in 2001. I linked the article and summarized it for you. In that latest update to Title IX reporting, it changed the definition of who a responsible person is. It used to be called person responsible. Now it's called responsible person. You say, well, Dale, that's just a play on words. Nope. It greatly expanded the role of who is required to report. Now, when it was person responsible, it was a person, the principal. When we had, now that we have responsible person, it means everybody that gets a check is now legally required to report. Used to be that only certain, when I first went to Gardner Webb, to that campus, we had to go through all the training just like you do. And I thought, I could do this training, but I kept my mouth shut. No, never volunteer. I paid attention the 2 years I was in the Army. I paid attention. Never volunteer. But when I went through that, but when I first went, it was you had to have certain status at Gardner Webb. If a student came to you, you weren't required to report it because you weren't a person responsible. There was only one person in our building who was the person responsible. That has changed now. And so if you are a professional, if you get a check at the building and a kid makes a report to you, you have to report that. You say, well, I'm a school administrator. I know I have to report it. It's not the point of the story. What does that behoove you to do with your staff? Train them. Because you get sued, like the kid in Union County that that all this tort liability emanated from. The suit was in 1990. It was decided in 92. That's when tort liability came in. I was principal in Burke County at that time. And what happens is the kid says, I told my teacher. And the teacher says, yep, he told me, but what my duty, I didn't know I had to report that. And you say, but you're a responsible person. That's your role. And the teacher says, when did you tell me that? What training did you provide that told me that I was now a responsible person and I had a duty to report? So the notion here is in that staff handbook, on that required workday, when everybody has to be there, and you don't let them leave early or go to their rooms and work, what do you do with them? This is the kind of stuff you do on that day. You explain. Don't care how long you've been in the business. You might be a 35-year teacher, but the rules have changed. Exiting COVID, the rules have now changed. Everybody is a responsible person. If you get a check here, what about the custodian? What about teacher assistants? If you get a check here, you're required to report, and you need to tell them what the steps are and who their next person to report to is. You need to make sure the law, you understand, it's now responsible person. We now have everybody that gets a check is a responsible person and has a duty to act. I think that's it on number 4, but that's good lessons for us for due process.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So you remember when I told y'all about we had a situation, my principal, a child was reported like was touched by her brother and like nobody did anything. So was I supposed to say anything? Because nobody still said anything. Nobody still did anything. So was it my job to say something to somebody or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When you get a report of child abuse, you go to your counselor who is supposed to contact Child Protective Services.
Yeah, that was the one who was supposed to be, she was doing a file report. So she said she felt like the child was lying. So she didn't report it.
Okay. But you report to her. And then if she makes that, she doesn't have the authority to make that. It's not very smart, which is not different from most counselors I ever met. I used to tell folks all the time, you need to remove the word discretion from your vocabulary. What are you talking about? Well, that counselor used her discretion, his or her discretion, to make a judgment call about that. What if that kid ends up dead, harmed, or hurts somebody?
Yeah, she actually ran away. So the kid ran away.
Well, there you go. This is what I'm talking about. I mean, that wasn't hard for me to know that that's most likely to happen. A responsible person has a duty to report, whether you believe it or not. That I use my discretion. You don't have any. The law has taken discretion out. Due process, there's no clause in there that says follow these 5 steps unless you don't feel like it. There ain't no number 6 that says unless you don't feel like it or unless you don't want to. A responsible person has, when a child goes to, the teacher refers a child to a counselor that says that they've been inappropriately dealt with sexually, regardless of where it happened, the counselor's supposed to stop what they're doing, pick up the phone and call Child Protective Services immediately. That's pretty simple. Well, I didn't think she was telling the truth. Well, you were using you were using discretion that the law does not afford you. Not very smart. If we didn't have such a long night, I could tell you some counselor stories. Now, I'm not anti-counselor, but counselors many times deal with life at an emotional level. That makes them good people, but it makes them really poor administrators. We don't do emotion in administration. We just don't do that. So I'll tell you a quick counselor story. I had this counselor, it was her first year. I was a middle school principal, 7th and 8th grade, rural county, the one that Olivia's in. And she came to me. Now, pardon my language for a man my age, she was a grown woman. She wasn't a beginning teacher. She had 2 children of her own. They were school age. Her husband was principal in the district. She had gone back to school. I don't know, early 30s, old enough. And she said, I've got a problem. Okay. Said, we've got a student in the 8th grade and the kids are complaining that he smells so bad that they can't stay in class with him. He's not bathing. It's middle school, 8th grade. And that's just Tuesday in a middle school. And she said, well, I don't know how to approach this without hurting his feelings. I said, not a problem. Send him down here. She said, do you mind if I come back with you? Because I want to hear how you handle this. Fine with me. So a few minutes later, she brought him back down. He walked in the door, and I was busy at my desk, and I was on the phone, and I was talking. I had a couple other. I just reached down at my desk, picked up a towel and a bar of soap and threw it at him and said, here, hit the showers. That was the end of the conversation. I don't have time for that other piece of it. And he turned, went to take a shower, and that was the end of that. So he just started showering at school every day or two. Fixed that problem pretty easy. Again, I'm only interested in outcomes. Counselors sometimes, because they're concerned about feelings and other things, use discretion that the law does not afford them. Teachers do that sometimes. Some administrators do that. But you won't last for long in administration if you don't follow the law and policy. If you assume discretionary power that you don't have, discretion means power, by the way. If you assume discretionary power that the law does not grant you, you will not last long in this business. So that's a good one, Sparkle. Thank you for reminding us of that. Speaking of power, and this leads into that. It's almost like I write this stuff down, isn't it? Teachers assume too much power with discipline. That's one of the things that, again, that they're using their discretion on writing referrals and writing up too much or letting some kids. And Olivia pointed out her school, the staff has too much power, no due process. They're very arbitrary and capricious. She just described every high school in America. She just described every high school in America. That's where you get the most of those abuses. She said they need to do some training at their school on differentiating between discipline incidents and classroom management. Again, what should be doing on those required work days? This is what we're talking about. The biggest waste in public school that I can see in terms of where you could have the most impact is wasting work days. You know, and you say, well, you know, not all teachers have to come. All of them have to come on the required days, and that's when you do the required stuff. But because of the structure in public schools, which teachers don't have any annual leave days that they can take on work days? The beginners. Who do you need to be doing this kind of PD with? The beginners. But what do? We tell them they don't have to come, or we let them go down to their room, or they take day, they don't show up and we don't hold them accountable. They've got no days. They can't be taking days. They don't have any annual leave days yet. Sparkle says we provide coupons. Now, you know that's illegal, right, Sparkle?
Yes, it's so annoying, but it ain't nothing I can do because it ain't my school. But I'm like, they need to come, and it gets on my nerves every time.
They need to come and do PD. But now, what coupons is code for? And I mean, I know this, but coupons is code for flex time. You know, flex time's illegal, right? Everybody understands flex time's illegal. There is no such thing. There is no flex time. State doesn't allow you to pay people for time. And you say, well, they're going to come next week. No, they don't allow you to pay for people for work they haven't done yet. There is no flex time. I have somebody every semester that argues with me. It's all organized. I don't care if it's organized or not in your district. It's not legal. There is no scenario that you can argue me down that when you go to court, you won't lose that. It's expressly written in North Carolina code. No flex time, period. Well, it's not flex time, it's coupon. It's still flex time. And that's how we're letting teachers without annual leave days not come to work days when we need to be doing professional development with them. It's the beginners that need this professional development. All of them need to learn about law changes on responsible person and the grading policy and everything in the handbook. But classroom management, that's your teacher work days. That's the beginners that needs that. That tells me that you're not utilizing your teacher work days. That's kind of a duh. What are they? They're supposed to be working that day. You're supposed to be training. You say, well, they've got planning during the year. Planning is supposed to be academic in nature, isn't it? PLCs, all that stuff. Do not take teachers' planning time because it will harm instruction in your building. The teacher work days are when you need to be doing things like professional development for classroom management and discipline. That's when you need it. And you've got days built in to do it all the time. And you've got the group that you need, which is your beginners, because they don't have the days to not be there. Flex time is not only illegal, it works against what you need to be able to do in your building to make sure that you're all legally safe. Lillian pointed out that there's a lot of lack of teacher consistency and due process in writing up referrals. And Alicia pointed out you got to train your teachers. And part of classroom management is building relationships with the kids. The teachers building relationships with the kids. That needs to happen on a regular basis. Alicia pointed out in her district that they spent $500,000 on lawsuits, negligence lawsuits. Teachers not doing the right thing.
EC also, we're struggling in the department.
Yeah, I told you I used to go every day, $6,000 a pop on EC. You know, not staff not doing what they're supposed to do, teachers not fulfilling due process, costs you money, negligence, not supervising. These are things you need to handle on work days, train these people. And then finally, Jeanette pointed out that not all interventions are for all students. When we're talking about restorative practices, and number 5, again, due process and discipline should be about mending behavior. Restorative practices, not about retribution. And we have to make sure that the punishment fits the crime. It's not arbitrary. You know, we punish some and not others, or it's capricious too much. But even within the interventions that we have in restorative justice, different ones work different well with different ways with different kids. So people think, well, in order to be fair, and of course, you know, I hate the term fair. The only thing that the only concept of fair that I recognize in the adult world is the place where you go in the fall of the year to get a corn dog and ride the Ferris wheel. That's the only concept of fair that there is in the adult world. I mean, we do so many bad and wrong things under the notion of fair. Fair doesn't mean that we do the same thing with every kid. There's where we get in trouble with interventions is because I did, you know, you keep a list. I used to do this back in the 80s when I was first a school administrator, and before, you know, we've been to two or three other things, but the discipline du jour of that era was called Assertive Discipline by Lee Cantor. None of you are old enough to remember that. I just thought I'd throw that one out there. And it was all about, you know, making sure that you did exactly the same thing and to the same kid all the time, whether it worked or not with that kid. You know, everything had to be the number of times that the kid came. If this was visit number 3, he got this punishment, no matter who the kid was or what the infraction was. That was in order to be fair. Fair doesn't mean equitable. All interventions don't work equally well with different kids. If you keep giving the same intervention, that means it's not working, because that means you're seeing the kid multiple times. That's your first. People say, well, how you know the intervention didn't work? Did he come back? Well, yeah. Well, that means it wasn't working. Duh. So the notion here is discipline, if you look at it, is like next, just running them through a line. You'll have plenty of line to run through. That's not the purpose of due process and discipline. We're trying to find a restorative practice, an intervention to stop the behavior. But if you only see it as just next, an assembly line, we're just running them through. If you only see it that way, you'll have plenty of business. That's for sure. All right, looking at our weekly schedule. Next week, you have the week off for the 4th. make sure you should be finishing up your OMA and moving to the skip during the break. You should have task 1 is due during the break. Many of you are well past that, and thank you for that. When we get back, we're going to do, we've done all of the different modules enough that we're now able to get to discipline, which is of course the biggest one. We've touched it pretty much every week, building to the point where we can talk about it when we get back. And then we'll have our 3rd case, and then we'll look at a field trip policy, and then we'll have our 4th case. The biggie, of course, is this one right here. And I'll go ahead. I like to put it after the break because I'll go ahead and apologize now. That'll be a marathon night. A lot of content on this, especially when we start talking about alternative schools and EC kids. And they are a big part of what we do. So we can't leave that part of it out. So that's where we are. Anybody, again, y'all are doing great. I couldn't be happier. I'll say it again as I normally do. If y'all had a better instructor, y'all would be dynamite. You're great already, so I'm very pleased. Your work is good. I'm looking forward to our presentations tonight and seeing what you've learned. Leandro is close to my heart, but it's a tough pill to swallow. So I'm very interested. This is my favorite one. And so I'm looking forward to it. So who's our first group tonight? I normally keep a list of who went. I can look back and see who went first last time. Who went last time? Let me see. All right, so Sparkle's group went first. No, case study 1, Michelle's group went first. Then let me see, Heather. Wednesday, that's Wednesday's group.
They're waving their hand, Dr. Lamb.
All right.
Keisha's waving her hand.
Why she not already shared her screen? You got to hurry up here. You're burning daylight.
Because she didn't watch it.
They want to go to bed tonight. I don't sleep.
Not first. I said we went last time. Not first. I was raising my hand and we went last time.
We'll go first tonight then.
Oh my God.
That wasn't my fault, y'all. That's not my fault.
I wasn't gonna make y'all go first, but Keisha volunteered, so
Just jump off the deep end, Keisha. Let's go.
let's go.
God. Oh my jeez.
Keisha,
Okay.
you owe us dinner. You owe us dinner.
My fault. Okay. Okay, whatever. Okay. What do we gotta do? Can I share my screen?
Yes. I'll turn my camera off, make it easy.
Where is that stuff? All right, hold on.
Keisha, you want me to jump in and do it?
Yeah, please. That's why we should have went second.
Hold on.
Sorry.
You're good. There.
All right.
I'll let you run it. I'll just drive. How about that?
Okie doke.
All right. There.
Okay. Now I got a bunch of mad people at me, but case study 2, Leandro. You can skip to the next one. You can jump to the next one. All right, so here is our case study overview. I can't see the names who's actually going to do it, but I believe it was Heather and Terrence. Our group is going to provide an overview of tonight's case study for Leandro.
Okay. So I would like to say hello to everyone. And by the way, Dr. Lamb, I'm quite sure you know I am a counselor and not a teacher. So, so you know, my ears was open when you started talking about the counselors.
Talking bad about counselors. He said he's called me out in the road. Trouble in River City. But you understand what I'm saying is.
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely.
And that's what makes them good counselors. is you know, they work at that emotional level that connects with kids. That's what makes them good. However, it works completely not in your favor in school administration, which is about just following the process.
Yes, which I've been told that, but you know, I
Yeah,
think
it's not the first time you've heard that. I can tell it's not your first rodeo. But Carl likes, and he's got that James Harden beard. I'm telling you, he's a dead ringer for James Harden. Carl likes the same. He works at Lincoln Charter. Same thing. But Carl has gotten his first administrative job, and I'm telling you, he's great. He's great. So
yeah,
counselors can make tremendous administrators. You know, if they remember that they don't have discretion that you have as a counselor, you have none as an administrator.
right. Okay, so I'm going to we're going to approach this as a administrator, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview, and then we'll let Heather take it away. But according to our slide, this case study was to address equity and education, and the superintendent. So therefore, the superintendent writes a letter to all the parents and community members about implementing a new system called student-based budgeting, which this was to evenly appropriate funds to provide services to schools within the district. The allocation of funds is based on the enrollment of students and their needs. The gradual release started with 4 schools within the district, and because of the success, the implementation district-wide became the intention, and I guess that's the key word, intention of the superintendent.
Okay, let me ask you a question there.
Sure.
Where did he get the, just thinking, where could he have gotten the money for the 4 pilot schools?
Now that's a very good question.
All right, thinking back to when I talked about the superintendent in Chapel Hill, Carborough, and she did exactly this, but the initial money for the 4 schools came from the superintendent's discretionary fund. Superintendent can spend up to a certain level without board approval. But if you want to go district, and that's what the superintendent in Chapel Hill, Carborough had done. She had initially done a couple of contracts with this company that was underneath her limit that she could spend discretionary as the superintendent without having to have a board vote. However, just like him, she wanted to take it district wide and signed a contract and had planned to use her discretionary money to try to cover that, but it was a lot more, A, than her discretionary money, and B, you can't encumber it. If her limit in Chapel Hill, Carborough, and of course it varies from district, was $90,000 because they're fairly wealthy. So we'll just use that $90,000. Now everybody's superintendent doesn't have that much, and some have more, but $90,000 of discretionary money, she can only enter into a contract for up to $90,000. She can't encumber it ongoing because that would be an ongoing, and that's not discretionary. That would be an ongoing expense. So when she ran the first pilot over on the Carborough side, she used her discretionary money. They came in, did what they did. She liked it, and then she signed the contract for $800,000. I think it was actually the third contract because it was about $1 million total. She signed the third contract for $800,000. What's the problem? That's more than her discretionary. Can you use your discretionary for an ongoing expense? No. So people say, well, how do you do the pilot? If it's illegal, well, he uses discretionary money in a small number of schools. But now he wants to go and start regulating or manipulating the money district-wide. But you've got to understand that superintendents do have discretionary monies, but they can't be used for continuing contracts if that continuing contract exceeds the level of that discretionary money annually. So In Chapel Hill, Carborough, she got $90,000 a year. She could only do $90,000 up to $90,000 contracts. Her problem was she signed an $800,000 contract to go district wide with this.
So
I told you it's the exact same one. Now, obviously, I picked this case study out before she did what she did. But if she'd had this class and seen this case study, she might still be superintendent in Chapel Hill, Carborough.
So, Dr. Lamb, my question at that point is, when you actually see something, okay, I understand the pilot, and you figured out how that works, and you see that it does work. Is there any way to be able to implement a program, even though it's outside of the discretionary funds? I mean,
absolutely. You would go to the school board and get them to put it in the budget. And then you would, the county commissioners would you would get the board to, lobby the county commissioners to put it in the budget for them to fund it.
Okay.
Except, what did she know that the board wasn't going to do, nor the county commissioners?
Okay.
I suspect she had already asked them, and what had they told her? The school board probably told her no, and the county commissioners probably told her hell no. Why would the county commissioners be so angry about it?
No monies.
Well, they were going to have to come up with the money, but they've got money. But the problem is understanding the political structure. Can school boards fund themselves, their own budget? No. Who they got to go to get money? County commissioners. All right. County commissioners, how are they elected? They're elected by the people of the county. Is it general election, or is it by district? It's by district, isn't it?
By district.
And so, by virtue of this, which county commissioners are going to get their ox gored that going to lose money from their schools? The more white and affluent ones. I'm going to go ahead and say that ugly R word. The Republican part of town is going to lose money. And who's going to gain money in a situation like this? The poor minority, the Democratic part of town. How many Republican county commissioners are going to vote to do this? That would be zero. So my suspicion is she'd already asked the school board, and even if they said yes, the county commissioners are never going to vote for anything that their political opponents can say, you took money from our district and gave it to them kids over there. Pejorative, them kids over there. Code.
Okay.
That's what's going on in our county right now.
Exactly right, Heather. What happens in the next county commission election if you let people take money from your kids and give to them kids over there?
See, our county is fighting with our school board right now.
Yeah.
They kicked them out of our Board of Education building.
Yeah.
Told them to go find another building. They offered up the armory, the old armory building. Yeah. And told them to spend $5.5 million to renovate it on their own dime.
Yeah.
And instead of doing that, they actually moved into one of our closed down schools.
Yeah.
That the school system owns, so they don't have to worry about renovating too terribly much. But it's a hot mess in Cherokee County right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's really bad.
Yeah. But all right.
Well, I'll dive into the Leandra case then real quick. But as a consensus, these were some of our takeaways from the Leandra versus state of North Carolina. The case affirmed the inequitable and inadequate school funding to provide a basic public education for students of color and low-income families. The North Carolina Supreme Court case was heard in 1997. And then in 2002, the courts found that there was a violation of student rights to a basic education. Then they ordered the state to find a solution. Some of those solutions consisted of competent, certified, well-trained teachers in every classroom, well-trained, competent principals, access to appropriate resources for instructional programs. And then the state of North Carolina has also not met requirements for a sound education for all. And then in 2018, the judge responded for oversight of the West End, appointed to conduct and did 8 recommendations of critical needs. And then in 2020, Judge David Lee required an additional funding and creation of a joint action plan that as the first phase of an 8-year term, and it's still ongoing at this point.
All right, that $2 billion that Judge Lee said that the state owed the low wealth districts, how much money have they gotten of that $2 billion so far? None. What's their excuse? You can't make us.
That's pretty much what they're saying. You can't make us do anything.
You can't make us. That's
Nope.
their argument. You can't make us.
And they're going back and forth on it, and they just can't come to a clear-cut decision.
All right. So when Leandro was decided, again, the plaintiffs lost. And when the case was decided, they said, all right, but we're not giving minority and low wealth kids enough. We'll give them some more money. We'll start a lottery. Well, that turned out to be a fool's errand, not a nickel from the lottery. And so the bill just kept adding up. I mean, you said you need all these things, highly qualified teachers, but there was never any money that came along to pay for them. Oh, we're going to start a lottery. There'll be a windfall. No lottery money. Never got to schools. And what little got there was just pork barrel. I mean, it was embarrassing. They put a commercial on in the Piedmont of North Carolina. I think they ran it in Winston-Salem, Greensboro. They ran it in Charlotte. Stayed on one time, and there was such a public backlash, they took it off. What was it up in Stokes County? They built them a cafeteria so that they didn't have 300 kids at the high school. Should have been closed. Built them a cafeteria. Cost about 10 times what a cafeteria ought to cost in Stokes County. They couldn't figure out how to do 2 lunch shifts. So they wanted a cafeteria where everybody could eat lunch at one time. At a school that needed to be closed, didn't have the enrollment to support. It was just a complete boondoggle. It literally cost millions more than a cafeteria building would. It was just a complete steal of the money. That came on, they ran that ad one time and took it off because it was such, and then they ran one on the NASCAR Institute in Mooresville. Why in the world are you subsidizing NASCAR, a private business, making billions of dollars? Why are we taking state money to build them a NASCAR Institute as part of the community college system in Mooresville, in Ireland County? I mean, after those 2 debacles, they quit telling on about the pork barrel projects that they're. Neither one of those did a thing for public school, though. Educating kids.
Right. And our county just built a new school of innovation that is, I mean, I don't know how to describe it adequately. I feel like it's like an alternative school.
Yeah.
It's a 2-story beautiful building, and they were planning on putting the high school there. But now the county is also getting ready to potentially shut down 2 or 3 of our schools, because we have 13 throughout the whole county.
Yeah.
And they're wanting to close down about 2 or 3 more just to try and save money, but then they're going to pour so much more back into them.
Well, again, it's just there's no rhyme or reason on the capital money coming from the lottery. There's not much of it, and it's just pure politics. It's not helping kids get educated.
That is correct.
I mean, why in the world would you build a cafeteria building even if you needed one? That's got nothing to do with educating kids. Why would you build a NASCAR Institute? I mean, the stuff that has been spent on is really ridiculous. But there's not a dollar gone for educating kids. That's the problem. And so Wested Independent came in and said, you're years behind. That stuff that you promised that you would not change the funding formula, but there would be funds for these low wealth and minority kids. There would be additional funds, but where are they? Not a penny has ever come. Where is it? You owe $2 billion. Where is it? And the General Assembly's response is 90-90 boo-boo. You can't make us. We don't want to. That's their argument. I thought it would be some high level article. No, I watch them on TV all the time. It's just like a bunch of 12-year-olds. You can't make us. We don't want to. And I'm like, okay.
All right, so here are both sides of the issue. For Leandro, he was trying to be proactive and build equity within the district, For example, every child in North Carolina deserves access to a quality education regardless of their background or where they live. He wanted to revise and provide resources to students in need of at any school in the district. His action steps in place, forward movement in place to provide services to students in needs and looking to engage the community and look for the local financial support. However, the other side for the state was that the state contended that it grapples with resource limitations and conflicting budgetary demands when distributing education funds, necessitating decisions that account for broader statewide priorities alongside educational needs. They also argue that detailed educational policies and funding decisions should remain with the legislative and executive branches, asserting that judicial oversight could potentially weaken democratic process and accountability. And they also argue that financial constraints and physical challenges restrict this capacity to fully address the educational requirements highlighted by Leandro, by also emphasizing a complexity of balancing diverse budget priorities while safeguarding statewide interests. So Elisa is now going to share with you if the superintendent plan was appropriate.
In reviewing the superintendent's plan and looking at everything that we discussed as a team, because of Leandro's law in North Carolina, it mandates that funding must be allocated for specific purposes and cannot be moved by principals or superintendents within a school district. The state has a constitutional obligation to ensure all children have access to a sound education, and school districts must allot equitable funding to each student. The law deems that the superintendent's plan is illegal because of the redistribution of funds. The superintendent's plan redistributes funds based on perceived needs rather than ensuring that it is equitably allocated among all the students. The 8 recommendations that you see was suggested by the judge.
Yeah. So is the superintendent's, again, go over that part. Is the superintendent's plan legal?
No, sir, it's not.
No, it is not, because the low wealth goes back to the low wealth districts lost the lawsuit. People think, well, they said they were going to provide that wasn't what the lawsuit was about. The lawsuit was about changing the funding formula. You wasn't going to have to provide additional funds if you changed the formula to start with. So we have to understand the money follows the kid. $8,000 a pupil now, and it follows the kid.
So Dr. Lamb, I have a question. What happens? Because I see this a lot. I know after 10 days of enrollment, that's when they count the allotted money for those students.
Yeah.
What happens after 10 days when those kids transition and they go to another school? Is that just a loss for that school?
No. So let's talk about that. That's a good question. Hold 1 second here. Let me do this right quick. All right. How long is a school month? It's 20 school days, right? There's 10 of those a year, 200 days. All right. So first 10 days, we start making corrections after 10 days. Remember, you can stop your share for a minute here. When you get that budget allotment sheet, I told you it's a swag. What does SWAG stand for? Stupid, wild ass guess. We're just guessing. We don't know how many kids are going to show up, especially in a place like Charlotte. We could be off by several hundred. It's just a swag. All right. So we're guesstimating that you're going to need 40 regular state paid teachers, and we do our master schedule based on 40 regular state-based teachers. All right. And that means that you're expecting about 800 kids. All right. Who pays for the first month of school? Local money. The first 20 days. You have to have funds on hand. Let me say that term again. You got to have funds on hand to run the first month of school, the first 20 days. At that time, you voucher the state to reimburse your money so that you can then spend it for the second month of school. That's called a modified accrual accounting system. They don't give you the money up front. They reimburse the first month. So you got to have funds on hand to run the first month of school. Now, do they just send you that whole $800? I mean, $8,000 per kid at the end of the first month? No. They send you your first of 10 monthly installments of $800 per kid. Minus what? Minus absenteeism. They don't pay for average, they don't pay for the number on the roll. They pay for average daily attendance. Why do you think your principal's ranting and rave all the time about taking attendance? Good, so they can get paid. What did Snoop Dogg, what did Randy Moss say? Straight cash, homie. We need that money. So if kids don't attend, you don't get paid. Straight cash. And so they send it in 10 monthly installments. So if a kid goes somewhere else, the next month you got the money. Your district bites it that first because that won't get reimbursed to you. But after that, you don't have the kid anyway, and you're not spending money on him anyway. And whoever's got him next gets the next month. So at 10 days, we start scrambling and moving teachers around to where the kids did show up. And at 20 days, it's done. But we start moving them at 10. But at the 20-day mark, the state says, all right, it's 20 days. How many you have? This is how much money you spending. At 20 days, this is how much we're sending. Ever how many have been attending? Why we out hunting them, beating the bushes? Where are they? They didn't show up. Now, what you hope is they went to another school in your system or your district. But what's been happening a lot lately, when kids don't show up, they're at privates or charters. Then it gets ugly in that you hired 40 teachers over here. You didn't have but 700 kids show up. We lose 5 teachers. And they didn't show up at any of the other schools in our district. We lose them, period. We lose 5 teachers. They have to go home. We can't afford to pay them. We're not going to get paid. We don't have the money in the local budget to pay that many teachers. Elisa says that's why they're so tight with money at the end of the year. Yeah, they got to have funds on hand to start the next year. There ain't going to come any money from that. There's going to be no money that when you get that last month of school, there won't be any money coming back from the state until after the first month of school in the fall. And they why do you think they call all money? If you hadn't spent money, they call all money back at the end of the year. That's to have funds on hand to start the next school year. It's very tight, very tight. And if you spend money that the state don't reimburse, you just lose it. You overestimated the number of teachers. Fiscal year starts on July 1st. And so it ends on June 30th. And so, boy, they're scraping up at the end of the school year. They're scraping up every dollar they can scrape up to have enough money to start school the next year, because there's not going to be any allotment from the state over the summer. There's not going to be one that comes to start school in August. You're not going to get it until September, after the first month of school. That's the next time you're going to see any state money. It gets rather ugly. So that's when you see things like running 4-day weeks in the summer, closing buildings, doing all that stuff. They're trying to save money. They need money to start school next school year. But again, you show up 100 kids short, you lose 5 teachers. You hope that those 100 kids showed up somewhere else. What if they didn't? Then you lose them. You have to send them home. Or you have to pay them out of the local budget. What if you don't have the local money? You're already scraping, trying to make it through that first month. And if you make it through the first month, remember, kids aren't there. There'll be no money coming. You got to find the money again the second month. You just got to bite the bullet and let them go.
But Dr. Lamb,
yeah,
I've known schools like, well, my school anyway. My school, even though we didn't have the numbers to actually to show that we needed that amount of staff members, but because the administration was new,
Yeah.
They allowed them to hold on to
Yeah.
the allotment.
Mm-hmm. Again, but the local has to pay for it. The
I have
local
a
has to pay for it, or you have to have a grant, or you have to have something like Project Success. I'll tell you my story on that one in just a second after Keisha gets through.
This might sound like a crazy question or maybe off task, but is that the reason why we don't get paid for the 2 months?
Yeah. There's no
Hmm.
state money coming. They send it in 10 installments. There's 2 months, you don't get anything. That is correct. They only
So
pay
we
200
so
days.
we so we basically have to pay ourselves over the summer throughout the 10 months. So we don't
Yeah.
put money away, we screwed. If we do, then we'll be
You
okay.
get
But it's
less every
our
month.
money.
Yeah, this is not an IQ test. I told you about the beginning teacher who complained she didn't get as much money as they told her. I said, did you have your check spread over 10 or 12 months? She said 12 months. I said, you understand it wasn't an IQ test. They weren't going to pay you the same for 12 as they would for 10. If you got paid over 12, they were going to take it from those 10 checks. You got less. Now in Charlotte Mecklenburg, they pay you 3/4 of your check for those 2 months. That's the local supplement. So you get 3/4. So you end up with 1.5 months to pay for the 2 months you don't get a check in Charlotte. And if you work it out right, you pretty much get your money. So you can just have yours put on 10 months and Charlotte still get paid the same all year. But that's a local supplement. Other places, I'm betting Heather, I'm betting in Cherokee, there ain't no local supplement. A hail and hearty handshake and slap on the back. That's all you get in Cherokee. I tell you right now, that's all you get in Rutherford.
It's so different because I came from Georgia and we get paid over the summer. So it was shell shock for me coming up here and not getting paid over the summer.
Right.
But I guess my thing is, why not just keep a little extra in the pot and pay the teachers the 12 months?
Well, there's a couple of reasons why they won't do that, because it would really give you a lot more months on your retirement, and they'd have to pay you more in retirement. That is correct. There's a reason why North Carolina has the financially healthiest retirement system in the United States. Let me say that again. North Carolina has the healthiest teacher retirement system in the United States of America. That it's not potable. They won't let you take anything in. They won't let you take anything out. All the rules, but everything is set up for you not to make, for retirement to pay you as little as possible. And if they paid you for 12 months, that would accrue into your retirement account. Think about it, over a 30-year period of time, that'd be 60 months. That would add 5 years to your length of service. Boy, that would really make a big difference in how much money you took home in retirement, wouldn't it? Add another 5 years to your length of service. Ouch. Yep. It's just simple math. That's why they don't do that. And they say, well, Charlotte pays, yeah, but it doesn't count as state service though. It's just supplement. It's not salary. So it doesn't affect retirement. You say, why don't they just roll this into my salary? Well, because it affects retirement. Supplement does not affect retirement. And so it's kind of like longevity. No longer get paid longevity separate. They claim they rolled it into your pay. They used it rather than giving you a raise though. Again, they stole your money and then gave it back to you and expected you, to be a hero. And that's the same as setting the building on fire and getting an award for putting it out. That's exactly what they did with longevity. And so pretty soon it was gone. It was eaten up by the cost of living raises. Instead of giving you those, they just, took your longevity and rolled it in. And then long after that was used up where you should have been, then you just lost it. You just lost your longevity. Of course, there's a lot of things that they've done to you. I'm going to tell you right now, there are very, very few advantages to being old. I can't even, can't count on one hand the advantages of being old. But one of them is I have the Bailey exemption. What does the Bailey exemption is you know, I have full insurance benefits. I have full retirement with the state. And I have the Bailey exemption because I'm so old, I don't have to pay any state income tax. You know, so if you were fully vested in the retirement system before 1984, and obviously I was, if you had your time in, you know, your 5 years to be vested by 1984, then you get the Bailey exemption, which was a federal lawsuit that says you never have to pay state tax on your retirement. So it works out pretty good. But you go from that to what people get now: no insurance, no benefits, the scale back salary freeze from 20 to 30 years. And we wonder why. We can get all the help we want. There is no teacher shortage. We can get all the help we want if we're willing to pay people. We're just not willing to pay. Just like, you know, when Judge Lee said you owe poor and minority kids $2 billion, and you know, that party in the North Carolina legislature said 90-90 boo-boo, we don't have to. I mean, that was their argument, and it was that dumb. I mean, it was that, you know, we don't have to. We got the votes here. We don't have to do anything. So we don't have teachers because we're not willing to pay. We don't want them. We don't have teachers because we don't want them. We could get plenty if we wanted. If we want them, we can get plenty. We just don't want them. We don't want to have to pay.
Well,
and
and I don't
this
know about other
idea-
counties.
Pardon?
I don't know about other counties, but Cherokee does not recognize a master's degree.
No, North Carolina took that out 10 years ago.
Okay.
10 years ago this past spring, April of 2014. Now, the local can pay you a supplement for a master's degree, but the state no longer does that. That's one of those things that the larger districts, some of them do. But no, the state, that's a local supplement, by the way. In Wake County, that is not state pay. That's a local supplement. No, they stopped. So in August of 2013, when this was passed that they were no longer going to pay for master's degrees, there was quite a consternation at Gardner-Webb, because we had all these people in the master's program, same program that you're in, except the 5-semester people. And they said if they can be done before April 15th, we'll grandfather them in so they get paid for their masters. Now, you know, now you have to in North Carolina, you have to get a job in administration before you could get paid at the master scale for an MSA. Y'all already have one, but you understand. So we had all these people in the master's program, and they had signed up with us. They were getting ready to go into their second year, and they had signed up with us with the notion is I don't know if I want to be a school administrator or not, but if I get this master's degree, I'll get my money back. State said no. They said, well, you're going to grandfather the people already in programs? They said, sure, as long as they're finished by April 15th, knowing that nobody finishes college by April 15th. And they were snickering. So what we did was we doubled up. So I went to Asheville. I had an in-person cohort, just same class in Asheville. I actually did this one. I did 603, 4, and 5. Becca said she was at Fayetteville State, and then they moved. We went accelerated. So I went to Asheville Monday and Tuesday and taught, like I teach Tuesday and Wednesday now, but it's 2 different sections. I taught the same section Monday and Tuesday every week. We doubled up. We finished 603 the middle of the fall. We finished 604 by Christmas. We finished 605 by the middle of the spring, about the middle or late March. And we graduated all those people, and they got their money. So I know exactly when master's pay went out, because I had that group in Asheville. I had 22 in that group. I still in contact with a lot of them. That was 10 years ago. We'll be 11 this fall that I started with them. Good people. We were at AB Tech, the Inca campus, right out past where 40 and 26 come together, south and west of the main part of town there. Good people out that part of the world. That's my folks. I'm from that part of the world. So that's my tribe. I really enjoyed it there. Really good people. They worked hard. I mean, they wasn't planning to have to come 2 nights a week. And can you imagine having to do 603, 4, and 5 from basically from September to March, and having to do all of that at one time? You folks are vets. I mean, y'all have already got a master's degree. Y'all are accelerated. Think about it. That was your first master's program when you're still trying to make sure you were using the right end of the pencil. Man alive. But they didn't complain. They didn't whine. They saddled up and we rode. Was that the wrong thing for the state to do? Absolutely. That's why I said South Carolina, they're on the right track. Now, South Carolina doesn't spend money on schools in terms of facilities and the upfitting of schools very well, but they will pay their people. They will pay their people. They pay for advanced degrees regardless of certification, and that they pay masters. They pay masters plus 30, even if you're still in the classroom. You're not hearing about this tremendous teacher shortage in South Carolina like you are in North Carolina. You never hear a peep out of Virginia. Those of you in border counties up there, you never hear a peep out of Virginia. Why is it only North Carolina is experiencing this problem? Those same people standing there in $1,000 suits in the General Assembly saying 90-90 boo-boo, we don't have to, are the same ones that are making these decisions that we don't want to pay teachers. Well, you don't pay, they don't stay. It's just that simple. So, yeah. $10,000 pay cut moving South Carolina. I'm surprised it was only that much. Truly, I am surprised it was only that much. I had a fellow that I worked with at Gardner Webb. He did his time. He squeezed his time, all of his days, used his annual leave, and did everything, and retired. I think he did 28 actual calendar years, but he retired with his 30 years in North Carolina, came to Gardner Webb, worked 10 years till he was 60 years old, got vested in the retirement system after 10 years at Gardner Webb, went to work and teaching high school English and down in Cherokee County. He was at Gaffney last year. He'll be at Blacksburg this year. They gave him all of his North Carolina time, his Gardner Webb time. But, he's not going to work 10 years to get vested in South Carolina. So they let him keep his Gardner Webb TIAFF account. They fund it rather than state retirement. They gave him all of his advanced degrees. He makes twice what he would make in North Carolina. Let me say that again. He makes twice what he would make in North Carolina. In North Carolina, he would be frozen because of the steps. After 20 years, you're frozen. He'd make about $50,000. He makes $100,000 a year teaching high school in Blacksburg. Of course, that sounds like below the market to teach that bunch of nitwits he had in Gaffney, but that's another story for another day. But yes, that's what we're talking about here. You can get people to leave colleges if you'll pay that kind of money. You can get the best of the best if you're willing to pay. Cherokee County was willing to pay in South Carolina. 20-minute drive out through the country. Why wouldn't you do that? Why in the world would you not do that? And that's what people are doing. So the Leandro case is about, we're not really interested in making sure that all kids do well in school. And the notion of a basic education, they're telling you that. That's all we care, is that you get a basic education. Not a good education, just a basic education. That you would, we don't want you to be too intelligent. You won't vote for our side. You'll know better. And that's both sides, but one side more in particular that, really doesn't want kids to be educated too well. But that's on brand for them. There's nothing wrong if you belong to that political party. I'm not, but now you got to understand that's on brand for them. They don't believe in social funding for social programs, and they see schools as a social program. That's consistent with their party platform and their worldview. Now, they do believe in corporate welfare, you know, tax incentives, tax breaks, those kinds of things. They believe in that side of it. Again, you know, to be consistent. They believe in the corporate side of welfare, but they do not believe in the social side. They see schools as social welfare. It's according to your political perspective and being consistent with that. Now, there's still people who still believe that there's such a thing as trickle-down economics. That's part of that as well. There is no such thing. It's been disproven 1,000 times. There is no such thing as trickle-down economics. The latest case that you should be aware of, and many of you are, is what's going on in Charlotte with Panther Stadium. That's just corporate welfare. What are they demanding from the city? Or they'll move the team? $650 million. They want $650 million from the city, or they'll move. And we have people from that particular party getting up and arguing that they'll leave town, and you know, if we need to give them the money, or they'll leave. They bring such economic prosperity to our region. No, they don't. They do not. They do not bring economic prosperity to your region. They bring economic prosperity to the fellow that owns the team and the people that are getting paid by the team. Now, I had on a Panther shirt Saturday at the conference, and somebody mentioned, and I said, well, I'm in town here. They were all, Panthers were very good to me when I was a high school and junior high principal in Charlotte and the central office. They were very good to me. 2 years, the high school where I was principal, they gave us Panther Stadium for 2 years. We used the club area to do our prom for free. Had security, was great. Very nice people. They sent people to talk to kids and do all kind of community outreach. They were very good. But for the kind of money that the taxpayers are paying them, they ought to be very good. But there is no economic prosperity other than the people who make directly money from working for the Panthers. That's it. It doesn't bring associated businesses to our city. What kind of associated business would we have for the Panthers? Oh, sports bars, maybe. Yeah, that's what we need. More drunk drivers on the road. Yeah, that's a good idea. But that $650 million is just corporate welfare. I told you, Olivia will be with me tomorrow night. She's here in Rutherford County. I'm at the Little House tonight in Rutherford County. County spent $20 million buying the old mill out on the bypass, tore it down, gave it to Facebook, no taxes in perpetuity. They built a server farm, 10 jobs, all of them minimum wage. That's what they got for $20 million. Now, somebody needs to stand up and say, how's this working out for you? That would be me. I'm the one that does that. So if they put a hit out on me, you know who got me. But you gave them $20 million. You got nothing in return. Tell me again about that trickle-down economics, about how these every penny of that came straight out of the county commission's budget for the schools. Schools don't have a pot to pee in or a window to throw it out of. Just like Heather said, they had to move over in the old Cool Springs building. Yeah. They cut all that money out of the school's budget. And that's what we're talking about here is in North Carolina, we have people who won't pay for schools. You feel very involved. You feel very in that. You want to right that wrong, but the law's all against you. You sacrifice your career and your home. You want to right a wrong, but you can't. And that's the point of this case is even the superintendent. That's why this is a superintendent case. The most powerful, the top dog in your district, even they can't move the money around. So what lesson should that be for you as training and aspiring to be a principal? If the superintendent can't do it, you can't do it. You got to account for every penny. You say, well, we're raising some money on our own. We're going to don't. Make sure it's reflected in your budget that the superintendent reviews and approves. We're going to take we're going to sell candy. We're going to do this, that, and the other for these kids. Don't. Make sure everything that you do is above board. Don't do anything off the books, because there'll be people that are watching. Told you. It was a grandmother of an elementary kid in Chapel Hill whose grandmother was a retired principal who knew that what the superintendent in Chapel Hill Carrboro did was illegal. She'd had a school law course. She'd been a school principal. She knew it was illegal. She's the one that created the big stink. Somebody will know. Somebody will find out. You cannot be moving money around. Everything has to be spent exactly as it comes to you, and even your own money needs to be approved that you fundraise. It needs to be approved and it needs to be budgeted, every penny. And you say, well, we'll let the PTA do it. And that way we'll have, no, you have to be responsible. You're responsible for what they raise as well. You have to account for every penny of it as well. You can delegate the activity, not the responsibility. Money is the tightest thing in our business. Every penny will be spent exactly how it's supposed to be spent. Every penny. All right, moving on.
Brenda, you want to do your slide real quick? Are you good?
Oh, I was talking the whole time. Yes. I promise you it'll be like 10 seconds or less because we pretty much summed it up. But I'll present. It's my turn. You can share the last slide.
I'm getting there.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. There you go.
All right. So basically, when we talk about negligence, the superintendent is held accountable for understanding and interpreting the law in his state, county. Although he had great intentions, he has no authority to manipulate and determine how the local, state, or federal funds should be used. The local funds are already predetermined how to be used. I believe he will lose his job if he moves forward with this plan of action, which, we reference the Robin Hood approach. The funds must follow the needs of the students and not necessarily the overall status of the school. So, basically that's how we felt about the situation. While his intentions were good, and maybe his intentions were good, but he was wrong at the end of the day. Its actions must comply with the legal and regulatory frameworks. Proper allocation of funds in accordance with established laws is very essential to avoid problems and maintain ethical standards in education.
It's a good point that this is, misfeasance, did the wrong thing. You're being generous there. At the superintendent level, this would be malfeasance. He's supposed to know what the law is. Misfeasance is you did the wrong thing. You didn't know it was the wrong thing. You broke the law, but you didn't know it. I don't even know that a principal could claim misfeasance. Even the principal's supposed to know the law. So you're being very kind. I won't argue with that, but you're being very, very kind to mislabel this as misfeasance rather than malfeasance. Now, am I splitting hairs here? No, not when we go to court. Usually cases of misfeasance in courts are just civil. Malfeasance can be criminal. You can not only get large fines, you can get jail time for malfeasance. So you got to understand that. If your job is to know the law and you don't follow it, you can be charged with malfeasance. And you could get jail time along with the hefty fine that you are going to get. Of course, you'll lose your job. But for a superintendent, they're probably going to hit you on a malpractice. They let the lady in Chapel Hill Carrboro resign. They did fire the chief financial officer and did face criminal charges. That's the follow-up on that one. The CFO you can't claim you didn't know as CFO, Chief Financial Officer. She did face criminal charges. Superintendent got off with misfeasance, and that's being kind, but you might be accurate there. It's according to how deep it goes. But now the person behind them, no, the one that actually cut the checks, they got her for malfeasance. That is correct. Very good job. Do you feel like you walked away with an understanding of funding? That's the bigger thing, is you understand how the money works. That's what I want to hear. All right, next group. That was a great job, by the way. Good job. Yay.
My group can go.
All righty.
All right, we're going to go ahead on and get started. Hopefully you guys see the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start us off with a brief synopsis about the actual case. I'm not sure why it's not letting me.
That's okay.
There we go. I think it's coming up now. Come on. Really?
If it doesn't load, Robin, it's okay. It's still big enough in that
Yeah, 'cause
other,
I'm like, what is going on?
mode.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead on and present. I'm not sure why it's not loading. So for the summary for the case study, the superintendent, John D., who wants to implement a new funding system called student-based budgeting. This type of funding system, allocates dollars directly to schools based on the number of students enrolled and specific needs of those particular students. The old system that they used was based on the tradition, but seemed ineffective. And the new system basically puts money behind the stated goals. Schools were committed to making transparent budget decisions, and it encouraged collaboration with the school principal. Next slide.
Okay, with the Leandro case in 1994, 5 school districts in low wealth counties in North Carolina, along with families, filed a lawsuit. These families and school districts argued that their school district did not have enough money to provide an equal education for their children, despite these districts being taxed at higher rates. In 2002, the North Carolina Supreme Court found that there was a violation of students' rights to a sound basic education and ordered the state to remedy this violation. In 2002, ruling was appealed, but the Supreme Court affirmed the 2002 ruling that the state of North Carolina was in violation of the North Carolina Constitution. And Article 1, Section 8 falls under that, which is a spending clause that requires recipients of federal funds to comply with certain obligations. And we know that Title I funding is the largest federally funded education program.
Continuing on with that, in 2018-19, the WestEd report titled Sound Basic Education for All, an action plan for North Carolina was released. It included 8 key recommendations and associated action plans for how North Carolina could comply with the directive to provide a sound basic education to all North Carolina children. Then continuing on in 2021, the comprehensive remedial plan was submitted. It included the programs and action steps based on WestEd's recommendations. 2022, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in favor of funding the comprehensive remedial plan. Then in 2023, multiple suits were filed to prevent or delay transfer of funds to school districts based on the 2022 ruling. Then in 2024, in February, the case was still being heard, and the North Carolina legislative leaders still refused to fully fund the comprehensive remedial plan.
All right, and then just to be clear, and there's nothing else to it, was not legal. So the superintendent's plan was not appropriate. It was not legal. We know that our federal, state, and local funds must follow the individuals, as we kind of said before. And it was in violation of the U.S. Constitution with Article 1, Section 8, which then also leads into the development of the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1965, where we created other additional funding that districts can serve our low-income students. So that was another way that the federal government is providing support. So our superintendent does not have the ability to change how that money was funded for his schools and his students.
When we look at the other side of the coin, we talked about whether or not it was ethical. And we know that everybody has their own thoughts and beliefs on what is ethical. And when we think about it, it really is ethical. We want to do what's best for the kids. That's what the Constitution says. That's what we as educators believe. And it seems simple to just be able to move the money because you have it, but legally, because of all of these laws, you can't just do what you want to do. And when I think about it being in North Carolina, as I was telling my group, this actually really does affect us here. Like there's money out there, and we as teachers and my administration is complaining about the things that we don't have. And it's so easy to say, you guys have the money, just give it to us. And like Dr. Lamb said, y'all are saying, nan and a boo-boo, we got it, but we're just going to put it all in a savings reserve. And so, I mean, is that ethical when you think about it? You have the money and you can solve the problem, but you're not doing it. So what does that leave me to do? That leaves my hands tied. And unfortunately, if I don't want to lose my house, even though what I think is ethical should be right, I have to do what the law says.
How much is in, what was the fund balance? How much did they move into reserves this year? They had so much money. What was it, $400 million they moved into reserves this year alone? Could have spent on schools, but
they said they were going to put it in the savings, and that's what they done with it. And it's just sitting there, and they're not doing anything with it.
Yeah. Waiting for the next big company to come along. Now, South Carolina people, tell me about the BMW plan. Anybody here know about the BMW plant from South Carolina?
Florence, South Carolina here. Timmonsville is right outside of Florence. Although the that will be up in the Greenville. I thought you were talking about the Honda. My mistake.
Greer.
Okay, yeah.
Greenville, Greer, Spartanburg, Travelers Rest, that area. It's actually in Greer. I normally have some people from that area. We got anybody that's from the upstate of South Carolina that can speak to the BMW plant? If not, Nicole, speak to the Honda plant.
Well, what I do know about the Honda plant, it is actually, when you look at the geography of the area, it's actually in Timmonsville. But at the same time, most recently, the school district in Timmonsville has come under the umbrella of Florence District because of misappropriation of funds and things along that line. And they were not meeting their basic state report card goals.
Okay. The notion here is that everybody is trying to, everybody's trying to, these legislators, by putting that money in reserves, they're waiting for a big fish like BMW to come along. I'll use the BMW example. North Carolina thought they were going to get Mercedes. Alabama ended up with it. You're looking to hook one of these big corporate presence that brings a lot of jobs and prosperity to your region, but it costs money. Again, that's corporate welfare.
They get huge tax breaks. I do know that much.
They don't pay any. They don't pay taxes. They give them all this money to come. They many times buy the land or build their facility or do whatever. They give them huge economic incentives and, no taxes, with the idea that will stimulate the economy, create jobs, other businesses will come out of it. If you Google that and you get into the BMW plant, what you will find is that never materializes. That prosperity never materializes. Yeah, you may have some jobs and they may be pretty good paying jobs, but think about the loss every year they pay no taxes locally. So it never comes anywhere out to making you money on the local scene there. Yeah, you got some jobs, but this company doesn't pay taxes. And there's no law that says that those people have to live in that community. So there's no taxes for that county. But what if you say, well, they get it back on taxes? What if they commute in from the county over or whatever? So the idea here is there's this general notion that, you get somebody like BMW, good times are here for good. In the end, they make no economic impact, because now if they came and they paid taxes, that would be different. But they're smart enough to know that they're not going to do that. And so not only are you spending money to get them, yeah, they're providing some jobs, but you're not taxing the company. So in the end, people have set and run the numbers on these consistently. You lose money in the long term. But as Shakita said, North Carolina parked a $500 million, 500 million in reserves for the idea of trying to catch that next big corporate one that comes along. But even if you catch it, it doesn't end up being that whale that you thought it was going to be. But again, one party believes in social welfare, the other believes in corporate. They believe in trickle-down economics, that will trickle down. If wealthy people get money, it'll trickle down to the poorer people. It never does. It never does. Not if we don't have any way to get any that money from them. They just shelter it and hide it and offshore it. They have resources to not pay taxes. And these companies, they don't pay any because you gave them, you indemnified them from taxes. And so, but that's the notion here is, yeah, they put that money in reserves with the idea of we'll try to do an economic incentive, catch a big company coming in, and then they'll boast and brag about doing that. And in the end, nobody will follow up to see if it actually brought any real money in, if they got any return on that investment. They'll claim that they do, but in the end, we know that they don't. Independent economists have found for years, this doesn't work. Just like giving the Panthers $650 million in Charlotte will not bring any more prosperity to the region. It won't create any more jobs. It just comes straight from the schools. So you say, well, if you know that, we need to do, again, we follow the law. We don't follow our heart, we follow the law. Go right ahead.
So basically, we believe that what the state is actually doing falls under the flat grant funding, in which, of course, yes, flat rate grant is distributed based on the student enrollment and average daily attendance.
Yeah.
And that came directly from our text.
Yeah. We have a flat grant funding, and that's what Leandro was about, was trying to change from a flat grant to a student-based formula. where wealthier places got less and poorer places got more. But again, they lost. So we still got a flat grant. Everybody, whether you're in Cherokee or whether you're in Mecklenburg, you still get 8,000 per pupil from the state. Inherently unequal. But they said, not our problem.
And here's the formula. And as Dr. Lamb said, the superintendent's goal was to change the formula. But again, we're sticking with the flat rate. So basically, our group takeaway, we discussed it during our group Zoom, that we are school executives and we're obligated to follow the law. We have to take our feelings out of the equations. We have to take our opinion as educators out of the equation, and not be offended by the term sufficient abilities, because we know that sufficient abilities for the minority students and those of poor background, they're not going to get that additional support that they need. And the gap between the haves and the have-nots is going to continue to grow. And again, when they describe being able to function in a complex and rapid changing society, sufficient abilities really aren't going to support that. Making informed choices, again, sufficient abilities are not going to support that. And this is coming directly from Duke Law. When we talk about engaging in post-secondary education and vocational trade, sufficient abilities do not support that. So that's just something to keep in mind. And when they talk about competing on an equal basis, we don't start out on equal ground. So I really don't understand how we can finish on equal grounds. And the most interesting fact, in Leandro, there was one good thing that did come about. Students who were suspended, they do have the right to an alternative education. So although as a whole, our group agreed that we did not support the decision, we did find one highlight that did come about, that decision actually supported the findings of King versus Beaufort County Board of Education.
All right. All right. Now, I'm going to play the devil's advocate now. I'm going to speak from my current tribe. As many of you know, the big house is in Lake Norman. Anybody know about Lake Norman in North Carolina? The southern rim in the very northern end of Mecklenburg County, the county that Charlotte resides in. Wealthiest place.
I don't know, but I think you should invite us all so we can check it out.
Come on. But you better bring your wallet.
No, you're funding it.
It's the most expensive place in North or South Carolina to live. It's just beyond reason. We have the highest county property rate in the state. We have the highest town rate in the state. Our property values are the highest in the state in terms of what they charge us our property taxes on. My house in the last 2 years, understand what I'm saying now, my property evaluation has gone up $300,000, not to 300, an additional 300. I'm now a millionaire, according to the county. The big house is now worth more than $1 million, considerably more. I pay the highest tax rate in the state, sales tax. If I want to drive to Charlotte, and it's not Saturday or Sunday morning for my classes, my doc classes on Saturday and Sunday morning, just like yesterday morning when I left to go to Gardner Webb, I had to get into toll lane. I drive the toll lane 8 times a month. When I leave to come here to the little house, beginning of the week, and then when I go back home to the big house at the end of the week. So I drive 8 times a month. My toll lane bill for those 8 times a month, I only drive 2 sections, about 6 miles, 6 or 7 miles. I drive 2 sections. I think there's 8 sections to get to Charlotte. I only drive 2. 2 of the 8 sections of the toll lane. I drive it 8 times a month. Anybody want to guess what my toll bill every month? $170. I drive it 8 times a month, only drive 2 sections, and it costs me $170 a month to drive the toll lanes. Somebody asked me the other day, you know, where I got my laundry done. And I said, front porch. He said, what in the world are you talking about, crazy man? I said, I just set the bag out on the front porch every Monday and they bring me the clean clothes from last week. They said, what's that cost? I said, $10 a shirt for them to wash and press my shirts. $10, you know, $20 a day to press, you know, my pants and shirt that I wore to work that day. What does gas cost? 50 cents more than it does where you live. So that's what my neighbors, we live in a private community, 157 houses. We have our own marina. We have, you know, boat slips in the marina, take in, take out service. We have a pool. We have a community clubhouse. We have, you know, all the things. Very nice. It's manicured, looks like Augusta. Everybody's yard's kept up. Got to have a yard service. What does my yard man cost? $300 a month. What does my water cost? $200 a month. Except for in the summer when I irrigate, and it's $400 a month, my water bill. You know, it's just stupid money. Now that's what me and my neighbors live. Now you're telling us we paying this kind of money to live here, these kind of taxes? You're going to take money for our kids and give to somebody else? You think that goes over well with my neighbors? That makes them as mad as when I tell them about the kids riding the school bus. I told you that one. You know, they all drive their kids to school. I said, why you drive your kids to school? How else are they going to learn about sex if you don't let them ride the school bus? You know, but if you tell my neighbors that when they're paying that kind of money to live where we live, that you're going to take money from their kids' school and give it to somebody else's, in inner city Charlotte, how well do you think that goes over with them?
Not well at all.
Ooh, it makes them madder than a hornet. Now, as educators, we see the side where we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to do the right thing with all the kids that we get. They only see their kid. They only see their circumstance. Michelle pointed out that's the deal with private school vouchers. They want vouchers. They won't help send their kids to private school. They think, I pay these exorbitant rates to live here. I should even get vouchers. And it's hard to argue against that kind of money that people pay to live in that part of the world. We're paying all this and you're going to give it to somebody else. We're already paying more. And now you want us, and we're not getting commensurate with what we're paying already. And now you're going to take some of that. Boy, that's a hard sell. I'll just tell you right now, that's a hard sell. We see it from the perspective of these kids need this. They see it from, I'm paying this for my kids. They don't see the bigger picture, and you're not ever going to convince them that there is a bigger picture. Their only interest is their child, period. Yeah. And as you could imagine, not a lot of teachers live in Lake Norman. Not a lot of people. You can't afford to live there if you make teacher salaries. It's not a thing. So it's a mistake to think that everybody can see the need to do this. Obviously, everybody can't. All right. Excellent job. Next group.
All right, we are going to split up part of the slides due to unforeseen circumstances. Melissa, if you'll just go to the next slide, please.
It's not going.
Well, I'm on slide 3.
Okay, stop sharing, then reshare.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's happening. It looks like it's frozen on our end, Melissa.
It's not even popping up on my end right now. Hold on. Y'all seeing it now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. So we are going to just start with slide 3. Some of the issues that were addressed in the letter were equity and funding, implementation of student-based budgeting, a lot of what we have already discussed, that you can read on the slide. Transparent budget decisions, the commitment to make the budget decision that are clear in the best interest of all children. Community engagement, encouraging parents and community members to be involved in the budgeting process. That principals should reach out to explain how the community can engage and participate. Empowering school leaders, ensuring that funding supports the district's stated goals and empower school leaders to address their unique needs. The relevance of the Leandro case study, equity and funding. The core issue in the Leandro case is equitable funding across all school districts, ensuring that every student has access to a sound basic education regardless of their district's wealth. In this particular case study, the implementation of the student-based budgeting directly addresses equity and funding by allocating resources based on specific student needs and enrollment. And then we are also looking at addressing diverse needs as well. And that's there on your screen. You go to the next slide. So Leandro versus the state of North Carolina. So 5 rural school districts file a lawsuit against the state of North Carolina due to that inequity in funding. The Leandro plan, the Superior Court has ruled twice that the funding should be provided so students can have a fair and equitable education. After the ruling, the state should fully fund a remedial plan. The controller of the legislation actually filed a suit questioning if funds could be distributed without approval from legislation, just tying everything up in court. This has still not been decided. We know that funds are not the issue, that the state chose to put the surplus of funds in a savings rather than investing in our children for an equitable education. After 2 decades, the state of North Carolina has not fulfilled their obligation. I'm just reading my notes now, Melissa, sorry.
No, you're good.
Of providing all students with a sound basic education. The state has had a surplus of funds since 2021 at least, and still have not fulfilled their obligation fund. And we know that funds are not the issue. This is just a quote that I chose that I felt that summed everything up. But one of the things that I noticed in my reading is that although the quote is true in 1997, today it's been determined that this is not just a few of the rural counties issue, that this is a statewide issue. And I believe that the attorneys that are still working on this case are attempting to make that official, that it's a statewide issue.
Awesome. So I really dove into the West End report, as it was mentioned in the Leandro case, and it was really interesting because it really went back through the history of North Carolina. When I taught in CMS, we had to deal with the Breaking the Link report, and I saw a lot of correlations between these two. So essentially, during the 1990s and early 200s, like North Carolina was the academic leader. And, you know, they had so much going on. They were leading
pretty much the country, I think it was, or all the states or any southern state in math, and English was not far behind. And that was because they had these fully funded programs and support put in place. However, 2008, recessional cutbacks, these programs started to disappear, and they were just not sustained. 2019 and 2020, the Supreme Court of North Carolina's Leandro ruling was 20 years at that point, and the state is still not where it needed to go. So the West End came with these 8 critical needs, giving them this 301-page report that goes through how they could put each one of these things back into place so that they could be back where they needed to be and providing that solid education. In 2022, the Supreme Court upheld the ruling that the state must release over $1.7 billion to pay for teachers, principals, and programs that the kids for pre-K through high school. And then going into like February of 2023, it really became down to like, it's not a competition between who is for and against public funding for education. It's the issue at hand is whether the state's constitution ensures that every child has access to the quality basic education. And Leandro, that privilege was granted to them. In essence, the decision-making process is removed from politics and democracies when courts issue directives to implement. It says basically a plan which dictates virtually every aspect of education funding, not just for the districts that are plaintiffs, but for the 115 school districts across the state.
I'm gonna pull it up on my computer because I can't see that. So the problem is that superintendent's plan appropriate presents both sides of the issue. For the pros, we said equity in funding. SBB aims to allocate resources more equitable by considering the specific needs of each student, such as grade levels and at-risk status. This approach ensures that schools with higher needs receive more funding, addresses disparities that traditional funding models overlook, transparent accountability budgets. The plan emphasizes transparency in budget decisions, involves principals, parents, and the community in the process. This opens can build trust and ensure that funds are used effectively and efficiently. Empowerment of school leaders. The pro by this is by giving principals more control over their budget. The plan empowers school leaders to make decisions that best meet the unique needs of the student. This allocated decision-making can lead to more responsive and tailored education strategies. Alignment with education equity goals. The plan aligns with board educational equity goals and potential for improvement outcomes. Schools that receive funding align with their students' needs and better position. And it just reminds me when we were doing this budget thing, Dr. Lamb, and I was talking, and I remember our first class, and you were like, if your principal tells you no, it's state law, because she tried to tell me no. And so I was like, no, it's law, you have to show me. But I seen a lot of issues that were going on in my school because the budget, it was just too many hands in the pot. And then when people started auditing us, we were getting in trouble for a lot of things. So like I really took a lot from this, especially when it comes to laws and budget and funding stuff. You can move on to the cons. This was presented by our other classmate. She was unable to attend, but I'm going to read her slide. So the cons for this, implementation challenges. Implementing SBB across the entire district can be complex and challenging. It requires significant training, support, and adjustment to existing financial systems. Adequate funding. A con would be while SBB aims to distribute funds more equitably, the overall adequacy of fund remains a concern. If the total budget is insufficient, even a fair distribution may not meet the needs of all students, leading to unfunded schools struggling to provide basic services. Con, potential for inequity. There's a risk that SBB could inadvertently create new inequities. For example, schools with strong administrative teams might be better at advocating for the needs, potentially receiving more funding at the expense of less assertive schools. Community resistance. Significant changes in funding models can face resistance from the community, especially if stakeholders feel uncertain about the new system. And then a short-term discrepancy. The transition to SBB may cause short-term discrepancies and uncertainties, potentially impacting student learning and staff morale. Adjusting to new budgeting processes and priorities can be stressful and time-consuming. And so the overall takeaway from all of us is the superintendent's plan to implement student-based budgeting has strong potential to address long-standing issues of equity and transparency in school funding. However, it also poses significant challenges and risks that need to be carefully managed. Successful implementation will require clear communication, comprehensive training, and ongoing support to ensure that the benefits of the new systems are realized with minimizing potential drawbacks. And personally, this stuff has really hit home because my principal had make a running joke about don't do things that she does because it didn't work out. But on one of our goals, she had told the students since April if they got 20 ribbons, like for science, she would buy them lunch every Friday wherever they wanted to go. So of course, if you were a kid, what you gonna do? Get the work done so you can get lunch. And I told her, I'm like, you really know they're not gonna pass the science test. It's not gonna be serious, right? And so she's like, no, I really think it's gonna increase their scores. But what she did was hinder them. And when we got the scores back, they did worse than they could have possibly done. And so she owed kids some lunch, but she got mad and was like, you didn't pass, I'm not buying lunch. And so like that caused another equity issue because I got mad too. So I'm like, we're not doing that. Like you said it, we're gonna do it. So I bought the kids my lunch myself. But however, like this stuff really hits because I go back and I'm like, we shouldn't be doing this. Or maybe so now I'm transitioning to another school, but I'm also telling her like maybe we should consider some of this stuff so that because we're also transitioning to Montessori and we work in Durham. So Terrence know all about Durham. Like things are changing with our budget every time. Like we get a new email every day about the budget. So I'm just telling her she might want to be careful about some things. But that was our presentation.
Thank you. It was great. You can stop your share.
Is it not letting you, Melissa? You're on mute.
No, it's not letting me stop sharing. Like the menu is not there for me.
All right.
There you go.
I stopped it. All right. Do we have another presentation? I think that was everybody, wasn't it? Look at that. We're about on time here. All right. This is not a partisan political plug. This is just, I got two things to say as we wrap up. People of my age don't like to pay for schools. What has happened to the population in North Carolina over the last 50 years? It's gotten much older, right? Why don't people of my age want to pay for schools? That's my next tribe. You know, I've got several tribes here, but that's my next tribe. Whether I want to be old or not, it's not my decision to be a part of this tribe. Why do people my age and older not want to pay for schools?
Because they don't have kids in school.
That is correct. Nor grandkids. And they're concerned about what? Being on fixed incomes. You know, it's not like, well, if I'm not making enough money this month to pay my bills, I can go out and get another job. People won't hire old people. There's a reason why. We're old and grumbly. You don't want us. And so we have to understand that. So it's almost like, you know, a few years back when I hit 62, it's like your perspective in the world changes, that you begin to think about real retirement and what you're going to do in that retirement to make your bills. And you begin to understand that, you know, schools are a luxury for people my age. They're not a necessity. And so you have that built into your population that hurts you as well, in terms of equity of schools, because all they think is more money. More money, more money, more money. They can't see that it's a redistribution of what you have. They just see it's more money going here. They think that's more money and more taxes, less disposable income for them. There is some truth in that, not as much, but also they see the notion of you know, the wealthier people, that tribe that I live with, I'm not one of them. I've been there for 30 years. There's a reason I could afford it. But they don't want you taking money from their kids to give somebody else as much as they're paying. So you've got built-in resistance to anything other than the flat funding model. It's already built in. The second point to make is there was a time, as Melissa said, when North Carolina was a leader, and also Mandy pointed out that North Carolina was a leader in public education. Thinking back to those times, and I just Googled it right quick on my phone and looked at it. Those times were when the other party had a governor and had control of the legislature. That's not Dale's opinion. You can Google a list of, you know, of governors and where they were. Jim Hunt was governor twice for 8 years in North Carolina. You know, he was the great education governor. He you know, the power of the pulpit as the governor, and had the General Assembly behind him. And we had the highest teacher salaries and best of everything during those years. Coming out of the Republican administration that was sandwiched in between they tried to starve teachers to death. You realize during that administration, our salaries were frozen. He came, you know, got back in the governor after, you know, sitting out for a term, got back in and unfroze our salaries. But that was a foreshadowing of what was to come when the other party got in control. And now it doesn't matter who's in the governor's office with a supermajority in the General Assembly, in the legislature. They can do whatever they want to do. And what they want to do is put money in reserves and attract corporate clients to come to the state, which doesn't help anybody, but that is their political philosophy. Corporate welfare versus social welfare. You say, well, Dale, you're just doing a political advertisement. No, my point is this. Policy is made above the school level. Law is made above the school level. What do we hire you to do to carry out law and policy? As long as you understand what your job is, what your role is in this, you'll be fine. You may not like it. You may not agree with it. It may differ from your worldview. But you have to put that aside when you walk into the building every day, and your job every day, whether you like it or not, is to fulfill law and policy, to carry it out. If you keep that in mind, you will not be forfeiting your job, your house, career. You will understand. I will spend money only as money is intended to be spent. I won't even get in the margins. I won't even think about getting in the gray areas. If I don't know, I'll ask somebody. I'll get approval in writing if I'm unsure. And if they tell me no, the answer is no. I won't try to find an alternative way. And to conclude tonight's rant, the worst thing administrators can do is think outside the box. That should not be a thing for us. That is not our job to think outside of the box. If you're one of those kind of out of the box kind of thinkers, this is not the business for you. It is not. Now, if you want to think outside on instructional techniques and those kinds of things, that's what I'm talking about. That's fine on the curriculum side. But remember, this is an operations. I told you, you did curriculum, you did instruction last semester. What are we doing this semester? We're doing operations. How to have and run school. We don't think outside the box on how to run school.
What's wrong? Stop, Jordan.
We only stay inside the lines. That's the best advice that I can give you. We only stay inside the lines when it comes to the money, period. All right. Anybody have anything in closing tonight? I see our time is up. If not, I'll stay on. If you have any questions, I'll stop our recording.